Good morning, everyone. Yeah. My name is Benicia. I'm a professor of education at Bergen Community College. And in my program, we teach going to be teachers. So this particular topic, which is introducing emotional intelligence at schools, is very pertinent to our elementary schools, our middle schools, and our high schools. Now, I should narrate to you a short anecdote that happened in my EDU 101 class, that is Education 101 class for my going to be teachers. So I do this session on emotional intelligence every semester of the year. And so this semester, that is the spring semester, I did this emotional intelligence session again. This is like a two-session discussion that I have with my students. So in the beginning, I first introduced the topic of emotional intelligence. I defined the term emotional intelligence as awareness of one's emotions, understanding one's emotions, and making a reasonable decision on it. That is, taking reasonable action with respect to a particular topic. And then I asked my students as to, what do you think about it? Do you think teachers need to be emotionally intelligent? Or do you think academic intelligence is sufficient for a teacher? And guess what did my students reply? My students replied that we do not need emotional teachers in our classroom. We need academically intelligent teachers in our classrooms. And so I thought it was pretty interesting. So I thought this would be a great anecdote to start with on this particular topic. And then further on, I explained it, and then they realized that it's good to have a teacher who will not shout and yell at them, but is able to manage his or her emotions so that you have an effective teaching learning process. So let's start with the term emotional intelligence. Now, emotional intelligence is a term coined by Daniel Goleman. According to Daniel Goleman, emotional intelligence is a master aptitude, a capacity that profoundly affects all other abilities, either facilitating or interfering with them. So essentially, emotional intelligence is a person's ability to control emotions, to sense, understand, and react to others' emotions and manage relationships. Now, Daniel Goleman has spoken of 5 different abilities that impact emotional intelligence. One is self-awareness. Self-awareness is the awareness of one's own emotions and discernment between them. That means you are aware of what you're feeling at the present moment and making a decision about it. Then finally, you have the second one, which is mood management. Mood management means handling feelings so they are relevant to the current situation and you react appropriately. The third one is self-motivation, gathering up your feelings and directing yourself towards a goal despite self-doubt, inertia, and impulsiveness. Empathy, as you very well know, is being in someone else's shoes. So that means recognizing feelings in others and tuning in to their verbal and non-verbal cues. And finally, managing relationships, which is handling interpersonal interaction, conflict resolution, and negotiations. Now, how does this impact our schools? Now, research in brain-based learning suggests that emotional health is fundamental to effective learning. According to a report from the National Center for Clinical Infant Programs, the most critical element for a student's success in school is an understanding of how to learn. So you have the key ingredients as confidence, self-esteem, self-control, being able to have good relationships, capacity to communicate, and ability to cooperate. Now, there has been plenty of research with respect to emotional intelligence. And one such research is with respect to SAT scores and emotional intelligence. A research has mentioned that students who have had high SAT scores, they have compared students with high SAT scores and students with high emotional intelligence. And what they have found that there are a higher number of students who graduate with high emotional intelligence as compared with high SAT scores. So one can realize that just by being academically intelligent, one may not graduate from a 4-year school, or maybe even from graduate school. So that's the importance of emotional intelligence. Then we look further on as to how will emotional intelligence help our students. One is that it helps students to meet their needs in positive ways. In my class, we have this 2-part session on emotional intelligence. So what we do is, in the beginning, I just explain the term emotional intelligence and give them the research basis on it. Then we have an emotional intelligence test. Now, as you very well know, an emotional intelligence test is not like a one-sentence test, but rather you have like various situations, and then the student has to respond to that particular situation based on the choices. And then they are able to calculate their emotional IQ, emotional quotient. So what happens is, in this particular case, is that some students score high and some students score less. So I always tell them that, even if you score less, it doesn't matter, you can always develop on it. So later, after we have this emotional intelligence test, we have what is known as a role play in the classroom. So in this role play, I get my students involved in a particular situation. So we have what is known as a student, and then we have beliefs, we have feelings, we have attitude. And the student is impacted by negative feelings and negative attitude. And the student does not do well on the test. That means the student is like all stressed out and is not able to perform in the test because the student has negative thoughts that he or she is going to fail the test. And later on, the student fails the test. Then we have another scene where the student has a positive attitude and has positive feelings when the student is doing the test. The student realizes that he or she has choices. Either he or she fails or he or she passes. Nothing bad is going to happen to the student. The student is not going to be harassed by his or her mother. And guess what happens? The student passes because the student is not having much stress while doing the test. The student knows the options. So it helps to increase the students' academic prowess, prevents them from making risky choices. Because what happens is when the student is able to make a good decision, the student is prevented from making risky choices, as in getting into drugs or getting into gangs. Then you have a productive classroom time. Now let's go further on to after the student graduates from a 4-year program. How does emotional intelligence impact a student's career, that is employment career? According to Career Builder, employers are beginning to change what they look for in future candidates. Due to the fact that the economy is under such uncertainty these days and companies are getting smaller, 34% of hiring managers say they are placing greater emphasis on emotional intelligence when hiring and promoting employees post-recession. Another major statistic is that 71% say they value emotional intelligence in an employee more than IQ. This was a national survey that was conducted from May 19th to June 8th, 2011, with more than 2,000 HR professionals and hiring managers. The assessments revealed that emotional intelligence is a vital trait for getting a job. 75% said they would most likely promote the person with high emotional intelligence. Now, why do you think that you have employers really wanting emotionally intelligent employees? One is employees with high emotional intelligence are more likely to remain calm in chaotic situations. Employees know how to solve conflict effectively. Employees are empathetic to their co-workers and react accordingly. Employees are leaders by example. Employees are more inclined to make attentive business decisions. These are some of the qualities that employers value from their employees. They also say that employees will admit and learn from their mistakes. Employees can control their emotions behind when it comes to thoughtful discussions on tough issues. And they will listen more than they can talk. They're good with constructive criticism and graceful under pressure. So to go back to emotional intelligence in schools, I will narrate to you another anecdote that happened in my classroom, the same class. So what happened is that there was this particular video clip that I showed my students. It was known as A Tale of Two Schools. So you had like one school which was in an impoverished neighborhood. That means it was an urban school setting. And then you had another school from a higher middle class setting. So the student from the urban school setting mentioned that they had fewer amenities in the school. The student had to take public transportation. The student did not have a choice of classes. Then the student did not have a proper gym, while the other student from the upper class neighborhood had a choice of courses. They had their own radio program. They had very good gym facilities. And essentially, it was a better school. So I asked my students, after they watched this video clip, I asked them as to, what are your feelings with respect to this video clip? What do you feel with respect to this school in this urban setting? Do you feel that you would like to help these students in this particular school? And can you believe what did my students say? My students were very mum. They were very silent. And I was just wondering as to why is it that they're very silent about it? Why they were not coming up with responses of helping the students from the urban setting. And at that time, I realized that sometimes students are very insulated. They do not feel this empathy. You know what I'm saying is they are more concerned with what's happening with them than what's happening in their surroundings. So let's go back to this topic of emotional intelligence. So this is one reason why I feel that emotional intelligence has to be taught at schools. As in, it should not be a thing that is taught in a very haphazard manner, but taught in a very organized manner, as in having like some sort of sessions and having situations put forward to the student so that it becomes a very organized instruction rather than a haphazard instruction. So these are my thoughts on emotional intelligence, and I hope you got something from it because I'm very passionate about it myself. So thank you very much. And I would like to thank Ellen for giving me this opportunity to talk in this event. So thank you, and thank you for listening.